Hello, it's the Book Fairy here. I really enjoyed reading you all the stories during Book Week. So much so that I want to read you even more. So, all you have to do is to sit down, be very quiet, and listen really well. So, let's all sit down, get ourselves comfortable. That's it, give yourself a little bit of a wriggle. Oh, that's better. Ooh, wonderful sitting. Well done. Now we're all sitting comfortably. Then I'll begin.
Rapunzel. There once lived a man and his wife who had long wished for a child. At last their wish was granted, and the wife found that she was expecting a baby. At the back of their house was a garden that was filled with the most beautiful flowers and herbs. However, the man and his wife did not dare enter the garden, for it was owned by a wicked witch of whom everyone was so scared. One day, when the woman was standing by her window looking down into the garden, she saw a flower bed full of the prettiest Rapunzel plants she ever had seen. They looked so fresh and green that she felt a great craving to eat some of them. Well, day after day she would sit by her window staring at the Rapunzel plants for hours on end. Eventually she became quite pale and miserable. "What's wrong, my dear?" said her husband. "I must have some of that Rapunzel," she replied, "or I may die." The poor husband decided the only thing to do was to steal into the witch's garden at night and take some of the plant. Late one night the man climbed the high wall that surrounded the garden and hastily snatched a bunch of Rapunzel plants and made off with them. His wife was delighted. She made a salad of them that was so delicious that the next day she said to her husband, "I must have more of that delicious Rapunzel." So that night the husband stole once more into the witch's garden. Imagine his horror when he dropped onto the grass to find the witch there lying in wait for him. "How dare you come into my garden and steal my Rapunzel plant?" she shrieked. "You'll live to regret it." "Oh, please have mercy on me," begged the man. "I'm not really a thief. I came to help my wife who is expecting our first child. She told me she would die if she didn't have some of your Rapunzel to eat." Well, then the witch changed her tune completely. "By all means," she said, "take as much as you like. But in exchange you must give me your baby when it is born. Don't worry. I'll care for it as if I was its mother. What do you say?" The man was so terrified that he hastily agreed to what the witch had said. When his wife gave birth to the baby girl, the witch immediately appeared to take the child away. The witch named her Rapunzel, after the plant that had caused all the trouble, and took the child away with her. Rapunzel grew very beautiful, strong and healthy, with long golden hair that fell past her waist. And when she was 12 years old, the witch locked her away at the top of a tower in the middle of a forest. The tower had neither stairs nor door, but only one window at the top, so that nobody but the witch could reach her. Every day when the witch visited her, she would stand below the girl's window and call out, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, that I might climb without a stair." Then the girl would wind her long tresses of hair around the window hook and lower her hair all the way to the ground. The witch would climb up it as if it were a ladder. In this way Rapunzel's lonely life went on for several years. One day a young prince was riding in the forest when he heard the sweet voice. It was Rapunzel singing to herself. The prince was so entranced that he followed the sound until he came to the tower. But when he could find no way in, he became discouraged and rode home. Rapunzel's lovely voice had stirred his heart so deeply, however, that he returned day after day to hear her singing. One day, as he stood behind a tree, he saw the witch appear and heard her calling, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, that I may climb without a stair." Then he saw a mass of golden hair tumble down and watched the witch climb up to the window. "Is that the way up?" the prince thought. "Then I will climb the golden ladder too." The next day around dusk the prince went to the tower and called, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair, that I may climb without a stair." Immediately the tresses fell down and the prince climbed up. At first sight of the prince, Rapunzel was afraid, but the prince addressed her in such a friendly way that she knew she could trust him. "Once I had heard your voice," said the prince. "I couldn't rest until I saw you. Now I cannot rest until you agree to marry me." Rapunzel by now had fallen truly in love with the young man, so she willingly accepted. "I wish I could come away with you," said Rapunzel. "You must bring some silk with you each time you visit, and I shall weave a ladder of silk, and then I will be able to escape." Each day the witch visited Rapunzel, and each night the prince came. The witch suspected nothing until one day Rapunzel forgot herself and said to the witch, "Why are you so much heavier to pull up than the prince?" "Oh, treacherous girl!" screamed the witch. "You have deceived me!" She snatched up the pair of scissors and cut off all Rapunzel's hair. Then the witch drove Rapunzel from the tower and left her in the wild and desolate place to fend for herself as best she could. That night along came the prince to the tower, and he said as usual, "Rapunzel, Rapunzel, let down your hair that I might climb without a stair." But the witch was lying in wait. She tied Rapunzel's hair to the window hook and let the golden tresses fall to the ground. Up climbed the prince, full of joy as always. But when he stepped in through the window, it was not his beautiful Rapunzel that met his gaze, but the icy glare of the witch. "Aha!" she cried. And the witch, with a sneer, "So you thought you could steal my girl, did you? Well, she's gone, and you'll never set eyes on her again." Beside himself with grief, the prince threw himself from the tower, and would have died had he not landed in the thickest thorn bushes. Although he survived, the thorns pierced his eyes and blinded him. For many years he wandered through the wilderness, grieving for his lost Rapunzel and living on whatever he could find to eat. Eventually, he wandered into the same part of the wilderness where Rapunzel lived with her twins that she had borne. Just as he had done so many years ago, the prince heard the sweet voice coming through the trees. He made his way towards the sound of the voice. Suddenly Rapunzel saw him, and straight away she recognized him. She ran to him and threw her arms around him, weeping. As she wept tears of joy and sorrow, 2 teardrops fell into his eyes, healing them and restoring his sight. Then the two were reunited again, and the prince took Rapunzel and their children back to his own kingdom, and they all lived happily ever after.